Oh, we're very excited to have you here. And boy, this is your moment. Uh, First of all, do you mind if I spend a beat on why you left justice? It's amazing, really.
Sure.
The
Yeah.
story of Mel Gibson is my recollection, right? Uh,
Yes.
you're dealing regularly as the U.S. pardon attorney with all of these different requests for clemency and restoration of certain rights, like gun rights. Isn't that what the Mel Gibson thing was about?
That's what that was about, which I'll note is not typically what the pardon attorney does, but that's what was going on at the beginning of this administration.
And so they wanted the restoration of Mel Gibson's gun rights. And you were pushing back on that or just questioning as to why are we doing this?
That's right. I was being asked to make a recommendation that he should get his gun rights back. He lost his right to own a firearm when he was convicted of domestic violence.
And that was enough to create an adversarial relationship between you and the administration?
Well, Mel Gibson is apparently a friend of Donald Trump, and Trump made him an ambassador to Hollywood at the beginning of his administration. And Mel Gibson's attorneys wrote a letter to the Justice Department saying he's a friend of Donald Trump. He wants to buy a gun. He's not able to do so legally because of this criminal conviction. Please restore his gun rights. And it was told to me that I should make that recommendation to restore his gun rights. And I wasn't able to do that. Nobody told me why I was fired, but I was fired just a few hours after I communicated to the leadership of the Justice Department that I was not going to be able to recommend that Mel Gibson get his gun rights back.
You didn't feel that all ambassadors from Hollywood should have a gun, Liz?
Domestic violence is a really serious issue, and there's a lot of data out there that shows that domestic abusers are much more dangerous to their victims when they're armed. So, from my perspective, this was a pure public safety issue, and the fact of his relationship with the president, the fact that he'd made a number of famous movies, which were cited in this letter from his attorneys, did not move the needle away from the core issue, which is that it's dangerous for people with domestic violence histories to own guns. So on that basis, I couldn't make that recommendation despite his relationship with the president. And a few hours later, I was escorted out of my office by security.
It's from that sound legal perspective that you bring so much of your analysis. And before we get to the analysis of what's happening with Ghislaine Maxwell and the potential pardon, which seems to me clearly in the pipeline, tell me about the culture of the Justice Department and what you experienced. You really brought it to life when you said, they escorted me out of the building. There's a certain almost brutality to a lot of this now that I think is deliberate.
Yeah, it's a very different culture than it was just 6 months ago. I was a career employee, meaning that the intent was that I would serve under any president. And the majority of the workforce in the Justice Department, they're people who are career employees, people who've served under all different administrations, and they're valued for their expertise. So typically, the political leadership would rely heavily on the career experts because they're the ones who can tell them this is dangerous. This is a good idea. This is a bad idea. Here are where the fault lines lie. But this administration very quickly made clear that they were not interested in that type of independent expertise. They came into office with a political agenda. The agenda is being pushed down from the White House. It doesn't seem like the Attorney General has her own agenda. It seems like she is there for the sole purpose of executing the president's political agenda. And anybody who provides advice or takes positions that stand in the way of accomplishing those political objectives is not wanted. Those people are very quickly marginalized, either reassigned or fired. And that's what happened in my case. I'm not alone. There are a huge number of career experts who have been sidelined through reassignment or firing since this administration started. And it has created a very dangerous environment within the Department of Justice where the people who remain are afraid to speak up and decisions are being made about serious matters of public safety without the benefit of knowledgeable experts.
When the wave of pardons came through for all the J6ers, wasn't that the warning shot?
That was the very first day of the Trump administration, and I, the pardon attorney who would ordinarily be involved in that process, learned about it through a news alert on my phone, like most other Americans, did not even have a heads up that that was coming. And that made clear from day one that my office was not going to be involved as an independent authority on clemency. The decisions were going to be made out of the White House based on political considerations.
And just for us lay people, once there's a pardon, once clemency has been granted, it's irreversible.
That's right. Yep. There's no way to undo a grant of clemency once the president decides to issue it. So all of those January 6th pardons, they're final. And what's really striking about that group of pardons is that quite a few of those folks who benefited from them have already gone back to prison for other crimes. There are some folks who've committed very serious crimes, crimes involving sexual exploitation of children, one who engaged in a plot to attempt to murder several dozen law enforcement agents who are investigating him, people with all manner of weapons violations, a woman who was convicted of manslaughter when she was driving drunk. I mean, very serious types of offenses that some of these January 6th pardon recipients have already committed that have landed them back in prison. And that is attributable in part to the fact that there was no actual vetting of these folks. One of the things that the Office of the Pardon Attorney has done for many, many years is vetted candidates for pardon so that there is a lot of information in front of the president when he makes a decision so that an informed decision can be made about, is this person likely to pose a danger to the public if they are released early or if they are not held accountable for this crime? And that didn't happen here, and the consequences of that are already evident.
Yeah, those are the specifics that you'd hope would be reviewed before any kind of pardon or clemency would be granted. And
Yes.
we've noted
Yep.
some of these cases that you've referred to, but there are a lot of them. I mean, these
There
were
are
not
quite a
good
few.
people, many of them. Yeah. Uh, I wanted to play a little bit of Liz on MS to just set the table for our next topic, which is really the Ghislaine Maxwell thing, because it really is clear that they're circling the wagons around Donald Trump right now on the Epstein case. And it's frustrating because the messaging is getting confused. Bondi says one thing, Trump says another thing, and Kash Patel, Bongino, et cetera, they're all so they're trying to get some coherence to their message, it would seem. Albert, do you have that? I wanted to play a little bit of this is Liz on MS.
Liz, here's where I kind
And
of
Michael Steele is
look at
speaking
this.
now for
You
those just
come
listening
from
and not watching.
the pardon attorney space and kind of know what all that's about. I'm just curious, when you talk about a meeting like this and the principles that are going to be at the meeting, what does that say to you when you're, knowing the former thinking, if you will, inside the building, whether it's DOJ or the FBI,
et cetera.
To have this kind of confab and for the vice president to say, oh, we're not going to be talking about Epstein. Well, like the hell you aren't. Of course you're going to be talking about Epstein. Your own people are putting that out on the street. So I don't understand what they think we should think of this meeting when we see exactly what this meeting is trying to do, particularly given that none of the victims are represented in the conversation.
So the cast of characters at this meeting is one of the most interesting things about it. J.D. Vance, up until now, has not had any role in managing the Epstein crisis. And the fact that they're bringing him in suggests that they have now realized belatedly that they need to give Donald Trump a little bit more insulation from what's going on in the case. He was caught in a lie, a pretty big lie, just the other day when he said that Pam Bondi had never briefed him on the fact that his name appears in the Epstein files, and that turned out to be false. So now they're
being Donald Trump, not J.D. Vance.
Donald Trump, exactly, yeah. And now they're giving Donald Trump plausible deniability for when he goes out and talks to the press again about this, which we know he will because he can't help himself, by having J.D. Vance be the intermediary. So then next time he can say, yeah, Todd Blanche did not talk to me about his meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell, which is something that he has said several times in the last couple of days, because it's now being filtered through J.D. Vance. So that's significant. Another thing that's significant is now Pam Bondi seems to be back
back in the fold. She was out for a while. She was initially managing this issue and failed to do so effectively. So Todd Blanche was brought in to take over. And now it's everybody at the table, which suggests now they know that they need to get their stories straight. That's what this is about.
Right, that they can't be talking
this is. I
past
thought,
each other
as I
and
was
trying to
saying, you just do such a great job of putting the reducto on it all and bringing sharpness to it. Now, I understand the meeting has been rescheduled or whatever. It got so much media coverage, but it does look like, in addition to the messaging coherence that they're striving for, there is a deal likely in the pipeline. I know this is speculation, but Liz, I mean, it just seems so clear that something is going on.
Yeah, so Ghislaine Maxwell has already gotten something of a deal because she has been moved now to a minimum security prison. And that is really significant because Ghislaine Maxwell is convicted of a sex offense. She's convicted actually of 5 sex offenses. She's serving a 20-year prison sentence based on the nature of her crime. She is not eligible to serve her sentence in a minimum security facility under longstanding Bureau of Prisons regulations. However, that regulation has been waived in her case. It's something that can only be waived at a very high level, likely the director of the Bureau of Prisons or his boss, the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, would have to do that. So she's gotten a concession, a substantial benefit, going to a nicer, less secure, less restrictive prison than anyone else with a similar crime could be eligible for, which suggests that there is a deal that's in the works. Whether there are more benefits coming her way, we don't know for sure, but there has been a lot of discussion about whether she'll receive a pardon. And the fact that we are even having a conversation about it is really pretty shocking. There is not one case in history that I am aware of where someone who was convicted of a crime involving sexual exploitation of children has received clemency from the president. It's just the type of crime where that doesn't happen. It's not considered. And if a president were to consider it, the first thing that would be done is consultation with the victims to see how would they feel if this person were to receive a pardon. But by all accounts, the victims have not been consulted. The Justice Department has not been fulfilling its legal obligations to consult with the victims. And that is required by law, as well as longstanding Department of Justice policy. So it's really extraordinary that we've gotten to a situation where we're discussing this issue on really a daily basis. And she's just committed such serious crimes that have really destroyed the lives of her victims.
Oh my God, yes. I mean, it led to suicide, and the grotesque nature of these crimes is something that when you read about it, just makes your skin crawl. I mean, just the stolen lives, and what you point to when you talk about what might be in the offing is interesting because you also say the victims are left out of this, and so they've had to actually come to media and say, "Hey, guys." What about us? What about the details of the Epstein files that can be released so that the victims get their day in the media court? They are completely being bypassed.
Yeah, that's right. And it's having the effect of re-traumatizing them. This is something that career professionals at the department would be sensitive to. The Deputy Attorney General and the Attorney General are not sensitive to, but victims go through a really trying and traumatic process when they have to testify at a trial and participate in the legal process that is required to secure a conviction of someone who's committed a crime. And they endured all of that here. They had every reason to believe that Miss Maxwell's conviction and sentence were final and that they could have some peace. But it's now all being upended, brought into front and center of the public conversation. And there's a real possibility that this conviction will somehow be unraveled by the Justice Department, the very agency that is supposed to be advocating on behalf of victims of crime. So it's shocking what is being done here, and it really defies every norm, every convention, and longstanding policies of the Justice Department.
Would the deal that they make I'm already feeling as though we've heard 1,000 FBI agents have been pulled off of their regular duties. They're going through the files. They're looking for Trump's name. It would appear that there's some sort of dry cleaning going on of these files. And beyond that, what kind of statement or what kind of deal might there be with Maxwell? Meaning, is it just keep your mouth shut and don't say anything? Or you understand, Ms. Maxwell, that President Trump was never part of any of this, right? You understand that, right? And you're going to, I'm sure, maintain that position, which is truthful, right? Is that the kind of implied deal that they make?
Yeah, there are really two possible things that she could do for the Trump administration. One is to say that Donald Trump had nothing to do with the crimes of Jeffrey Epstein. And two is to implicate other people, people who are Trump's political enemies or rivals. And she could do either or both of those things. It seems likely that she will do at least the first one of those things. Some information has leaked to the media suggesting that she may have said to Todd Blanche, Donald Trump didn't know anything about Jeffrey Epstein's crimes or something to that effect. The issue, though, is her credibility. She is someone who has every incentive to say what Donald Trump wants to hear at this point, because she is now serving a 20-year prison sentence and is desperate to get out from under that sentence. Her attorney has made it clear that she's looking for relief from that sentence. And Todd Blanche, importantly, is someone who got his start as Donald Trump's personal attorney representing Donald Trump when he was not president and leveraged that into this high-ranking position at the Justice Department. He seems to be proceeding with the interests of Donald Trump, the man, front and center, not the interests of justice or upholding the laws of our nation or serving the American people.
You know, Liz, everything is so obvious here. It so lacks subtlety. This administration, to me, it's like a magician who doesn't know sleight of hand. Everything is so nakedly clear. And one of the nakedly clear moments, in addition to the overall movement of the chess pieces, again, you can just see it, was, Albert, do you have that from the Oval Office, the J.D. Vance statement? I think that he was saying, Trump saying it's all a hoax. It's over and over, all a hoax. And the more they say, Trump had nothing to do with this. Trump had nothing to do with this. It's methinks thou dost protest too much a bit. Albert, do you have that running just for a moment? I think it's just great context.
It's completely fake news. We're not meeting to talk about the Epstein situation, and I think the reporter who reported it needs to get better sources.
Look, the whole thing is a hoax. It's put out by the Democrats because we've had the most successful 6 months in the history of our country. And that's just a way of trying to divert attention to something that's total bullshit. Okay.
So what Tim Cook's there from Apple. I mean, it's an economic forum kind of thing. They're talking about the tariffs and about onshoring things. And Vance is talking about the meeting, saying the one thing we're not going to talk about is the Epstein. But it's hilarious. I mean, if you put it in like an episode of The Office, it would have fit in perfectly. I just am astounded by how open this administration is about everything they're doing. There's no spycraft to any of it.
You're right. The corruption, frankly, is right out in the open. The types of things that one could imagine being done in the past, but being done quietly and on the down low, are being done right in front of us. And Donald Trump seems to feel a sense of entitlement to use the Justice Department to accomplish his personal objectives. One of the most chilling moments toward the start of the administration was the day that Pam Bondi escorted Donald Trump into the Great Hall of the Justice Department to give an address. And he declared himself in his speech the chief law enforcement officer in the nation, which is actually the job of the attorney general, not the president. And she stood by his side smiling, and she echoed that, telling the entire workforce of the Department of Justice, we're talking about over 100,000 people, that we are all the president's lawyers. That is not true. The attorneys in the Justice Department, all of the employees in the Justice Department take an oath to uphold the Constitution. They are there to serve the American people. But Donald Trump believes that the Justice Department is his personal law firm, and Pam Bondi agrees with him, and she's the boss of all of the employees who work there, which puts them in a very difficult situation on a daily basis.
Serving the American people is something that's really getting lost in this administration. I mean, even the People's House, the White House, always was deliberately they had deliberately avoided things like the gold encrusted mantelpieces and the palatial aspects of a reign of a king. is something that they
Yep.
deliberately steered away from. And yet
Yep.
now it would seem like even those superficial aspects of the Trump administration reinforce his rise to authoritarianism, is what I would say anyway.
Yeah, the amount of money that's changing hands and the trappings of wealth that he is surrounding himself with using official means is really shocking. The Qatari jet is a good example of it. The attorney general signed off on him receiving a gift that is worth a staggering amount of money from a foreign government that he gets to keep after he leaves office. This jet that's been described as a flying palace. The US government is going to be spending hundreds of millions of dollars retrofitting it for his use, and then he will get to continue using it after he leaves office. It's really just a type of corruption that we have not seen before in this country. And we're seeing that at so many levels throughout the Justice Department as well. One of the things that I have been following that really just it's really just hard to comprehend is that there are now January 6 rioters who have been hired to work in the Justice Department who are being paid with taxpayer dollars. I posted on my Instagram today about one of them, and folks can find more about this on my Instagram, which is Lawyer Oyer. But there's a guy who is on video screaming at police officers and screaming at other rioters to kill the police officers as they're being beaten on January 6th outside the Capitol, who is now working in the office of the Deputy Attorney General. He is a senior advisor to Todd Blanche in the office of the Deputy Attorney General, which just shows the total disregard for basic norms of civility in our society that is corrupting, frankly, the work of the Justice Department. It should be very upsetting to all Americans, regardless of political affiliation.
Sure. I mean, the degradation of the Justice Department is on full display also. That example is stomach turning. It's just
Yes.
horrifying. Is there a way back? It seems as though all of the guardrails, to use the oft-used expression, regarding Trump and his extended reach to kind of do his dirty work, the Justice Department I'm talking about, those guardrails are gone. So I'm constantly, we talk about a lot of this stuff on the show, and some of what you've talked about today, these are real, legit revelations. And I'm going to get, well, what do we do about it? What do we do about it? And I always feel like, first of all, talking about it is doing something about it. You've got to build awareness on the part of the public that this stuff is going on. So right now, I think, there's a lot going on just in pointing it out and turning a light on it. But I'm wondering, there's no self-correcting aspect to the Department of Justice, is there, Liz? I mean, there's just a reality here that is associated with their corruption. If they want to corrupt it, they can corrupt it and make it rotten to the core.
There really is no self-correcting mechanism. You're absolutely right. What they have done is they have strategically and intentionally removed the guardrails that existed previously in the institution to make those corrections. Some of the most disturbing firings are firings of people in jobs that are not well known, but that are important to the integrity of the institution. For example, the ethics director for the department was recently fired. That's the person who would tell the attorney general or the deputy attorney general if they're doing something that violates federal ethics laws, or if they need to recuse themselves from a case, or if they need to make a particular disclosure. That person was fired, and to my knowledge has not been replaced. Another person who was fired the same day I was fired, actually, is the information policy director, the person who ensures that the department is complying with the Freedom of Information Act. That is an especially important law right now because it's what requires transparency in government. And now the director of that office is no longer in place, and there is a tremendous backlog of Freedom of Information requests with the department from people who are just trying to get basic information about what is going on there.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's a backlog. I mean, they really want no information out, and I'm sure the demand for the information has never been greater. So my last question to you, or semi-last question to you, is those of you who know the Justice Department so well, who've worked, loyally as public servants, it's not a get-rich job. I mean, working for the government is a job I think you do out of real public service. And I know there's great pride in many who worked at Justice formerly under past administrations, even this one, prior to the way it has changed so radically. So this is kind of a question about Washington and about the afterlife with the administration. Is there a community building there where I see you all scattered, but I'm wondering if there is a place, a message board, a meeting where there is where you and former colleagues talk about not necessarily strategies, but perhaps just what's going on and how America is changing.
There is a great organization that was founded by a DOJ alum named Stacy Young called the Justice Connection, and it provides resources to those leaving the Justice Department, some voluntarily, some involuntarily, and that has formed a really strong community of former Justice Department folks who are invested in the institution. And I think many of them, myself included, really hope to be part of the rebuilding process for the department in the future. I'm somebody who never really thought of myself as very political. I was in this, as you say, for the public service because I believed I was performing an important service to the public. And I truly believed that it was a function that had a role under any administration, that my work would be able to continue even when the administration changed. And that was just proven to be incorrect, but it should have been able to continue. The Department of Justice is a nonpartisan institution, and it's one that plays an important role that every American should be invested in. It keeps us safe, protects our civil rights, protects the rule of law, and it's just one that we urgently will need to rebuild when we reach the end of this administration.
So you do think we'll reach the end of this administration, Liz?
It feels like there's a lot of time left, and I have no idea where we will be in another 3.5 years, given how much has changed in the last 6 months.
Here is what Kurt asks, and there are just a couple of questions for you quickly. Ask Liz if J.D. Vance and the cabinet may actually be discussing Section 4 of the 25th Amendment. Oh, I don't think they're. Well, I mean, I'll ask you the question. I mean, that's the sort of the notion that you could remove Trump from office based on incompetence or based on questionable competence or mental acuity lapses or whatever. Well, can you speak to that? Do you think there's any meeting or any conversation around that?
I don't think so. I don't think anyone in Trump's cabinet would dare to initiate that conversation.
Yeah. I mean, it's also something that, here in Libville, and I ever consider myself a truly super lib. I know I'm progressive on certain issues, but also on others not. I think, like most Americans, I think that, we're a mix of things. But I think there's a reinforcement of, oh, Trump's really done it this time. Oh, my God, he's gone too far. And that's legitimately true, as it reflected in some of the things we talked about today. But I'd suggest that in our own echo chamber, everything seems so outrageous. But if you talk to people who voted for Trump in MAGA land, I talk to a lot of them. They're not, on some DEFCON level that would suggest that they're frustrated with Trump to the point that they want him tossed out. That's really something we have to get our heads around, and that's a heavier lift, it would seem.
Well, I think that's why it's so important that we bring to light some of the things that are going on in the administration that might not be widely reported or known. My focus is really on shedding light on what's going on inside the Department of Justice, things that I think should be concerning to every American. One of the things that I've been closely tracking is the pardons that have been granted to date by the president. And setting aside the January 6th pardons, he has issued a huge number of pardons to people convicted of very substantial white-collar fraud offenses. And altogether, Trump's pardons have had the effect of forgiving wealthy Americans of over $1.3 billion of debts that they owe to crime victims and to U.S. taxpayers. So they cost the taxpayer and the victims of crimes over $1 billion. And Trump has never explained why he's granted those pardons. They're mostly to people who are donors and supporters of the president, including one woman who paid $1 million to have dinner with the president several days before he pardoned her son. Things like that there's just nothing in that for the ordinary American of any party affiliation. And I think that everyone should be looking at things like that, questioning, why is he doing that? What's he getting out of that? And what am I getting out of that as a taxpayer and a voter? And my hope is that if we continue to shed light on these things that are happening, that Americans will realize that this administration is not benefiting them.
No, that's a really polite way to put it. I mean, I'd say this is a lawless administration. It's a pay-to-play administration. There should be a for sale sign out in front of that White House. But I love your Instagram. I love those moments. Lawyer Oyer is where you can find, and they're bite-size, easy to understand morsels of this abomination that's going on at the Justice Department. And in relation, there it is. Yeah, lawyer_Oyer. And you've become sort of this internet sensation, haven't you, Liz Oyer?
I don't know if I would say sensation, but I never in a million years thought that I would have tens of thousands of followers on social media. I'm on TikTok as well and Substack. My Substack is also Lawyer Oyer, and I'm posting some more in-depth content about not just the Justice Department in general, but also my own litigation. I am litigating with the Department of Justice over my firing, and I have a number of different things going on. So
I love it. I love it.
I hope that folks will consider subscribing to the Substack and following me on Instagram or TikTok. That's the best way to support my work.
And lawyeroyer.com is the place.
Yep, lawyeroyer.com is the way you can reach the Substack. I've kind of dedicated myself, or I am dedicating myself now to what I call defending our democracy. And it's not financially lucrative, but it's what I think I need to be doing right now. And I really appreciate folks following the content that I'm creating to help keep us informed and engaged.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure that I get for many listening on Spotify and on the Apple Podcasts, et cetera, it's Lawyer Oyer, and is there a dash in the middle or something, or is it just lawyeroyer.com?
Just, yeah, www.lawyeroyer.com will
Good.
take you right to the Substack.
Yeah, we've got it on screen, lawyeroyer.com, and they'll take the Substack. We will become among your supporters. We're fans, Instagram, TikTok, but we now will be supporters, financial supporters. I pledge that to you today.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course. I mean, I just think what you're doing is terrific, and I love that this conversation continues in all of these different forums in which you make yourself available. And I really appreciate you making yourself available to us today. And I hope we will do this again. Thank you, Liz.
Definitely. I'd love to join you anytime. Thanks so much for having me on, Mark.
Liz Oyer, everyone. Good stuff.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.